for the hunt? It's real stargate of you. Oh yeah, me and the Drifter did our fair share of Guardian hunting way back when. Ain't ready, but... crumbles. Sometimes the enemy looks just like you. I'll tell you what I always thought.
Can hunters get reset times 2 with a new chain? That's crazy, I got stunned. The fuck? I don't know how the fuck that stun went through. I felt like I fucked that. Holy damage. Dude, lock in, bro. Lock in, bro. I made a brick, dude. Motherfucker.
Alright, I am back with another marathon video as someone who definitely never said anything about it and has been cheering it on from the start. Yeah, so we'll see if I end up regretting anything I said in the past. But this is kind of part of a larger question that I've noticed, that are people sort of turning around on Marathon, and the closer we get, the more the answer appears to be yes, but it's kind of a slow drumbeat, and it may need to turn into sort of an avalanche by the time that actually gets here in order to secure it being a quote-unquote successful launch. This sort of began as soon as Marathon began its marketing campaign in full, I would argue. Even before the recent Sony thing with the release date or beta date and all that stuff, when they started rolling out these little mini trailers, these little lore snippets, these little faction teasers. It was around the Vidoc, pretty much, when that came out and went through all the runner abilities, and that started being a lot.
Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and you know, ladies and gentlemen, I know that the world is filled with nothing but the saddest news sometimes, but what if I told you it seems like for a while, you better get used to no more Steam Decks. And I've talked about the system for like years, ever since it actually came out. It's probably One of my favorite systems. Now, if I go to Valve's website over here, oh, look at those Steam Decks, out of stock, out of stock, out of stock. Generally, I kind of buy these sometimes for, like, you know, really close friends or, like, family that are like, you know, I want to get into that gaming. I really want to try that PC gaming. And I'm like, you know what would get you into some PC gaming? A Steam Deck. I mean, it's kind of like the most entry-level, like, handheld computer you can get. Because most people my age nowadays are usually playing their games on, like, a Nintendo Switch or whatever. Like, I see some of my friends have, like, that PlayStation Portal. And it's literally because, listen, man, my TV is usually taken over by somebody else. And mostly I like playing my games in bed. So having something in your hand is just usually the best thing ever.
Ozempic or Mounjaro have done what diets and willpower have failed to do so far: make millions lose massive amounts of weight with seemingly mild side effects. More than 1 in 8 US adults have tried the drugs. For the first time in history, the country's obesity rate actually fell. Since obesity is one of the unhealthiest things in the world, this seriously poses the question, should we give these drugs to everyone who is overweight to spark a medical revolution like we did with antibiotics and vaccines? The obesity trap. At its core, being overweight or obese is a mismatch between how much you eat and how much your body needs. Eat more calories than you burn and your body will store them as fat. Eat less and you'll lose it. But just because something depends on what you do, it doesn't mean it's your fault. Your drive to eat is programmed by evolution and can easily hijack your conscious decisions. For most of our history, food was scarce, so when our ancestors found a calorie bomb, binging on it was the best of ideas. The more sugar, fat and salt, the better. Our brains are wired to love these foods. They bring pleasure, enjoyment and mental release. This helped us survive in a world where food was the most important thing to worry about each day. And then, the world changed overnight and suddenly food was cheap, calorie-dense and hyper-palatable. Our ancient biology hijacked our modern behavior. Most of us can't help ourselves and overeat regularly. Today, over 40% of adults are overweight, and obesity affects 1 billion humans and kills almost 4 million annually. If trends continue, by 2050, 1 in 3 adults on Earth will be obese and half of humanity will be overweight. Since being overweight is also shamed on top of being unhealthy, we tried to fix our overeating behavior with all sorts of, well, behavioral methods. The world is filled with diets and healthy habits campaigns. But anyone who's been on a diet before knows that it's hard and no fun at all. Not only are you fighting your deep evolutionary programming, you're cutting down on a major source of comfort, social activity and good feelings. And if you've finally lost weight and want to ease up a little, you're back in the regular world full of amazing foods. Self-regulating around modern food is just too hard. So almost everybody who loses weight struggles to keep it that way or puts back on even more. So if fixing our habits doesn't work, what if we fix our biology? Before we get there, let's fix something easier first. How we engage with the news every day. Our consuming full trend covering thinking critically on the screen. Using this link gives you 40% off and losing weight. Ozempic & Co. Many eating behaviors, eat now or later, chocolate or vegetable. Many eating behaviors, eat now or later, chocolate or vegetables, are actually governed by an orchestra of hormones that are not within your control. You're not hungry in the evening because you decide to be or because this is when your body needs energy, but because your body releases certain hormones. And it turns out your fat is one of the major regulators of this orchestra. If you're overweight or obese, the excess fat is throwing your hormonal orchestra out of tune. This may make you more hungry or push you to overeat more, creating insulin resistance that causes type 2 diabetes and so on. We made a video if you want details. But there's one specific hormone that plays its tune quietly in the background, even in obese people. The glucagon-like peptide 1, or GLP-1. It's one of the hormones your body releases after a meal. It tells your pancreas to release more insulin to keep blood sugar in check and slows down your digestion to keep food in your stomach. And in your brain, it increases your feeling of fullness and being satisfied, curbing your appetite. These effects are usually modest. Once in your bloodstream, GLP-1 disappears in barely 2 minutes, its song quickly fading away. So one day, scientists had an idea. What if we made artificial copies of GLP-1 that play the same song but louder and much longer? A GLP-1 signal that stays in your body would boost insulin and silence appetite. The first artificial GLP-1 was approved in 2005 for diabetes and in 2014 for obesity, but the revolution came with semaglutide and tirzepatide, Ozempic and Mounjaro. Really powerful GLP-1 agonists that play their songs in your bloodstream for up to a week. They send out a loud and steady signal that dials down your appetite 24/7. You still enjoy food, but you feel full and satisfied much sooner, making it easy to not overeat. And since the song never really switches off, you feel less hungry throughout your day, making you eat less often. How intensely you feel hunger is largely genetic, so especially people who suffer from food noise, a constant urge to eat, feel a huge psychological relief from the drug. Finally, their body stops screaming at them. Suddenly, you're dieting without expending willpower, without really thinking about it. It feels magically effortless. By changing your biology, a drug changed your behavior. But, is this a good thing? Miracle drugs. Many people try a crash diet at some point in their lifetime, and it's not that crash diets don't work, they do. You can lose 20% of your weight in 3 months, from 95 to 75 kilos or 130 to 105. But such a sudden drop is not very healthy, and for the vast majority, the weight will come back within a year. Diets that are sustainable are actually not diets but long-term lifestyle changes. But this is painfully slow, so a lot of people quit out of frustration. And among those disciplined enough, results are pretty modest, 5 to 10% of weight lost in a year. The new drugs change that completely. In 3 months, you can lose 10% of your initial weight, 3 months later, over 15, and after a year, you may reach more than 20%, a level of weight loss that used to only really be achievable through bariatric surgery. In other words, GLP-1 drugs make excess weight melt away like nothing before. We can't stress enough at how unhealthy obesity is, causing everything from diabetes to heart attacks and cancer. So the consequences for health are stunning. Treatment with semaglutide cuts your risk of stroke or heart attack by 20%. 17 months of tirzepatide crashes your chances of developing diabetes by 66%. They also reduce sleep apnea, improve kidney and liver function, lower inflammation, cut cancer risk, and may potentially slow Alzheimer's. They might even boost fertility, as obesity often disrupts hormones and increases complications during pregnancy. And there may be more positive long-term effects. Some of these benefits are a direct result of weight loss, but intriguingly, they sometimes occur regardless of how much weight has been lost, and some have been seen in patients who weren't obese to begin with. We don't know why yet, but it seems like turning up the GLP-1 signal is synchronizing the whole metabolic orchestra, restoring a balance between brain, gut, and body. And as if that weren't enough, GLP-1 drugs may also quiet other cravings. They seem to reduce the use of alcohol, nicotine, cannabis, and opioids. Large trials are underway to confirm these effects. If the results hold, they could become something unprecedented, real anti-addiction drugs. But of course, there are side effects. Most commonly nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and constipation. Not fun, but usually harmless and fleeting for the vast majority of patients. More serious stuff like pancreatitis, kidney problems, or gallbladder disease do happen, but for well under 5% of people. Apart from this, the main downside of GLP-1 drugs may come from their greatest strength, rapid weight loss. If you don't actively check what you eat, taking these drugs is just like an unhealthy crash diet. Any steep calorie deficit requires resistance training and plenty of protein, or else you'll lose a lot of muscle along with the fat. That's harmful at any age, but especially after 40, when building muscle gets harder and the risk of falls starts to rise. So, while these drugs change your biology, they don't do all the work for you. Staying healthy still requires you to adopt healthy habits. After about a year, the weight loss slows down and eventually stops in most people. At this point, you usually stop using the medication. If you use that time to change your eating habits, you have a really good chance of keeping the lost weight off. But about 25% regain a significant chunk, and some 20% put back on all of it. So, for many, maintaining the results may mean staying on the drug forever. Is this a bad idea? Well, we don't know. The newest generation of drugs is just too new, so there's no long-term data. The first GLP-1s from 2005 haven't shown major issues. Based on what we know today, it seems pretty clear that living with the drugs looks much healthier than living with obesity. Conclusion and opinion. A recent study modeled what would happen if millions of US adults who are obese or overweight got GLP-1 drugs for life. In just 2 years, about 50% of all obesity in the country would vanish. Over the years, it would prevent 50% of all obesity in the country would vanish. Over the years, it would prevent 26 million cases of diabetes would vanish. In just 2 years, about 50% of all obesity in the country would vanish. Over the years, it would prevent 26 million cases of diabetes, 13 million cases of heart disease, and 5.5 million premature deaths, which seems like a pretty good thing. And new drugs that are in final trials promise to work even better. Defeating obesity suddenly feels within reach. Right now, the biggest obstacles are actually supply shortages and high prices. But these are artificial problems. In the long run, increased production and plummeting costs seem almost guaranteed. So, should we just inject obesity away? Well, for now at least, it seems that there are few downsides, although please don't listen to internet videos and talk to your doctor before you make any decisions for yourself. It's also important to remember that while these drugs are immensely helpful, they are not magic. They make a hard thing easier, but it still requires you to change your habits and put in some effort. But even with all of these caveats, it seems the future just got a whole lot healthier. If you're looking for sciencey products that you can't get anywhere else, check out the Kurzgesagt shop. We've got a very useful wormhole mug. It's designed to hold your favorite beverage and has a built-in wormhole. Or our science posters. At a glance, you can learn about huge topics like the history of humanity, evolution, or the origin of the universe. Right now, you can get up to 60% off posters until March the 3rd. They'll look great on your wall and will add a dash of science to your home. Could be a nice alternative to getting yet another landscape print. Take a look around our shop. You might discover a unique product dedicated to your favorite science topic. Everything is created with lots of care by our team of scientists and designers to inspire you and spark your curiosity. The Kurzgesagt shop is open.
San Diego, California, is one of the top 5 vacation destinations in the US and is home to the Keating Hotel, which lies in the heart of the city's buzzing gas lamp quarter.
Ozempic.
San Diego,
Consciousness doesn't make any sense. Sights, sounds, smells, textures, the warmth of love, the sting of sadness, the coldness of heartbreak. Why do we experience any of it? We've mapped out the entire observable universe, measured every single neuron in our brains, and we've even trained machines to think, speak, and act just like us. And still, we don't understand the most fundamental thing about human existence. Why does it feel like anything to be you? Why is there a little person inside of your head? And a story of your life that exists through time. Although it's something that every single person who has ever existed has experienced, consciousness is one of the most difficult things to explain or understand. Philosophers, mystics, scientists, and religious leaders have all come to the same uncomfortable conclusion. Consciousness isn't as straightforward as it appears. It unfolds in levels, and the deeper you go, the stranger it gets. Let's dive in. Level 1, Deep Sleep. It's the most ordinary, yet the most mysterious state of consciousness. We enter it every night without thinking, slipping past the edge of thought into a void so empty that even the concept of it being a void disappears. The entire world dissolves, the self vanishes, and even dreams don't exist at this level. All there is a silent stillness that's vast and impenetrable. Although we experience this every night, it still exists beyond the realm of our understanding. Just like you can't understand what it's like to be blind by closing your eyes, you can't understand what deep sleep feels like by taking a nap. All we do know is that one moment you're awake, fully aware of your surroundings, and the next moment you're awake and fully aware of your surroundings. But for a few hours in between, you are nowhere, completely oblivious to your surroundings. According to neuroscience, you're in what's called the delta wave state. It's a deep, slow rhythm that's pulsing through your brain at less than 4 cycles per second. It's the body's most restorative mode, where the nervous system resets, tissues heal, and your memory consolidates. This state is a necessary maintenance cycle when the mind is turned off so that the body can heal itself. But on the inside, something far stranger is happening. In this state, experience itself ceases to exist. There is no space, no time, and no you. It's as if awareness folds back into its source, the way an ocean wave returns to the sea and forgets that it ever rose, that it was ever a wave. Philosophers describe it as a kind of temporary annihilation, one without suffering or fear. It's like death being shy. You don't know that you're gone, yet you awaken, and you somehow know that you were. That paradox, to be without being aware of being, has haunted even the greatest thinkers for centuries. In the Mandukya Upanishad, it's called Sushupti, a state where the self rests in its unmanifest form. Buddhists regard it as a glimpse of nirvana without enlightenment, while modern philosophers see it as the ground zero of consciousness, the point at which the line between awareness and non-awareness blurs. And yet, even here, the seed of consciousness exists. Something knows that nothing is happening, otherwise you would wake up each morning and you would be completely confused as to what had just happened. So it seems that even at this bottom layer, awareness is still there. It only withdraws, watching quietly from behind the curtain. In that sense, deep sleep is both an ending and a new beginning. It is the nightly death of self and the daily resurrection of consciousness. Each time you wake up, you're reborn from that void, carried upward through the layers of mind that rebuild your world anew. The dreamer reassembles, the senses reopen, and the illusion of continuity resumes. But for a few hours each night, you cease to exist. And that, perhaps, is the purest form of peace the mind may ever know, at least on this plane of existence. Beyond that layer of emptiness, there is creativity beyond human comprehension. Level 2, Dreaming. Fragments of thought begin to move. Images shimmer into existence, and without opening your eyes, you find yourself somewhere else entirely. This is dreaming, the first world consciousness creates for itself. In this realm, reality is all self-generated. The senses have shut down, and the body lies motionless. Yet, within the theater of the brain, entire universes are created. Mountains rise and vanish. Faces from memory blend with strangers whom you've never seen before. You experience an entire lifetime in a few minutes. One moment, you're flying through an endless sky, and the next, you're trapped in a room without any doors or windows. And the strangest thing of all is that it all feels real, or at least as real as your everyday waking life. From the scientific perspective, dreaming starts after deep sleep and during REM sleep. the phase of sleep in mammals that comes with rapid eye movements and more brain activity, which leads to more dreams. Your mind is flooded with emotions, imagination, and different narratives. Your body, for the most part, is still stuck in an unconscious state, but the mind is now free to wander, to explore the world it creates for itself without any boundaries. Philosophically, the dream acts as a mirror, a miniature version of existence itself. In Hindu philosophy, this is swapna, the inner world that reflects and distorts waking reality. The Greeks saw dreams as messages from the gods. Freud saw them as windows into the unconscious. Modern neuroscience calls them memory alchemy, where the brain mixes fragments of the day into symbolic narratives. Yet, none of these explanations capture the uncanny truth. When you dream, you are both the creator and the inhabitant of your world. Inside a dream, you are the laws of physics, the architecture of space, and the author of time. Every voice you hear is your own mind speaking back to you. Every face is carved from your memories. The dreamer and the dream are one and the same. You build a world, forget that you built it, and then wander through it as a character. But just like waking life, dreams carry emotion, consequence, and even transformation. A nightmare can make your heart race. A lucid dream can make you feel like a superhero. A positive vision can give you peace that lasts for years. For something not real, dreams leave remarkably real footprints. They reveal the creative nature of consciousness and a scary thought that reality, even our waking reality, may just be another dream. And perhaps that's their deeper lesson. Every night, as your mind weaves impossible worlds and convinces itself that they're true, it rehearses the same act it performs during the day, constructing experience from within. The only difference is that in dreams, you sometimes remember that you're the only one imagining it at all. Level 3. Waking. As you wake, you notice the red marks on your face, proof that you maybe enjoyed this sleep a little too much. Your eyes squint, struggling to adjust to the orange rays of the yellow morning sun spilling through the window. Outside, the green grass smiles as it's kissed by the morning dew, beneath a bright blue sky where shades of indigo fade softly into violet on the horizon. The last remnants of dusk from the night are gone. You are now fully awake, and your consciousness opens to the complete spectrum of experience. Not just colors, but also sounds, scents, sensations, and emotions. The orchestra of awareness that gives our world a shared meaning. This is waking consciousness, the state we spend most of our lives in, where thought, perception, and action blend into the grand illusion of solidity. Here, the mind and the senses form a partnership, producing what we call reality. You feel the weight of your body, the texture of air against your skin, the rhythm of passing time. The brain processes billions of signals each second, sorting chaos into order, randomness into patterns. Every sound, color, and shape is translated into electrical signals that are then interpreted as a three-dimensional hallucination that's just consistent enough to work. Neuroscience calls it the default mode network. The mental system that constructs science calls hallucination that's just consistent enough to work. Neuroscience calls it the default mode network. The mental system that constructs the ongoing narrative of me and you, the observer at the center of the universe. But the longer you stare at waking life, the more fragile the hallucination that's just that are then sound, color, and shape is translated into electrical signals that are then interpreted as a three-dimensional hallucination that's just consistent enough to work. And shape is translated into electrical signals that are then interpreted as a three-dimensional hallucination that's just consistent enough to work. Neuroscience
The Marvel Rivals Kingsman situation just had one of the most happy endings I've ever seen from an internet drama. For one, this has skyrocketed Kingsman's career in multiple different ways. In one of his most recent streams, not only did he have 24,000 people watching him, which made him the #1 most watched Marvel Rivals streamer, but he also reached 10,000 subs.
I am almost at 10,000 Twitch subscribers.
Not only that, but the exact opposite has happened for everyone who was involved in the situation in a negative way, as Cece has also lost multiple different sponsors. She lost Infinity Mice, and then Razer is actually looking into also pulling their sponsorship away from her, but Infinity Mice is also reaching out to Kingsman to possibly sponsor with him instead. And the owner and CEO of Solaris also said that they're pulling her from the creator program, and she has been banned from Twitch as well. Essentially, everything bad that happened to Cece has been doubled, reversed, and given back to Kingsman instead.
Excuse me. You can't help me? You can't help me?
Hell no. Hell no. You know
What?
why?
Why?
Ain't nobody help me.
Damn.
Fucked up, wasn't it?
That is fucked up. Why? What they didn't help you with?
Life, man. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. You get a job, you work that job for 30, 40 years, you have 2 or 3 kids that don't like you, and your whole rest of your life is fucked up.
Wait, I still got a question though.
What's your question?
You want to sign a petition for me?
For what?
Legalize kidnapping children, so help them with their survival and awareness skills.
Oh yeah, I signed that.
Oh yeah.
Cause I like a couple of motherfuckers kidnapped myself.
Type shit.
Very proudly that I have never taken any action that resulted in the death of another human being.
There's one kind of half exception.
And I think about this all the time. In 1993, I guess it was, I was sitting in the morning meeting. I told you earlier that every unit meets every day at 9 o'clock, and you just talk about what happened in the country that you cover overnight. I was in the morning meeting, and the secretary came in, and she said, "John, General Powell is on the phone for you. Call him Powell." I said, "General Powell? How does he know who I am?" And she
said, "I don't know, but he asked for you by name."
My boss is like, "Well, go answer the phone." So I went to my desk, and I said, "Good morning, General Powell. This is John Kiriakou." And he says,
"John, if the Iraqis were going to kill the president, who would actually be in charge of that operation?"
And I said, "Well, if you're talking about the attempt to kill President Bush, George H.W. Bush, he had been visiting Kuwait." I said, "Kuwait operations are run from the Iraqi intelligence service's Basra station. But Basra station is headed by Sabr Abdulaziz Adori, the director of the Iraqi intelligence service."
He says, "Where does he sit?"
I said, "Baghdad."
"Where exactly in Baghdad?"
I said, "If you hold on a second, I'll look up the address." So I looked it up. I gave him the address. He said,
"Thank you," and he hangs up the phone.
I go back in the meeting. They were like, "What do you want?" I said, "He wanted to know about Sabra Adori and the attempt to kill President Bush." I'm like, "Okay."
8 hours later, we fired 47 cruise missiles into Iraqi intelligence service headquarters.
But by then it was the middle of the night in Baghdad.
And we killed the janitor.
What the fuck? Bro, dude, what the fuck is this guy talking? I think I remember hearing that story. There was no one there except the janitor. It was at night.
Make sure you don't forget to log into Destiny this week, because the store actually has good things that you might want. Starting off, we actually do have the Nothing Given shader, which is the Taken shader, which does look pretty cool. And then if you're trying to get the rest of the ornaments for the Taken, you do actually have the class item that's available, as well as when you go to the Bright Dust section, you do have the chest available as well. So make sure you get both of those. And then when you go back, go to the main page, the top right. I already collected it, but they are giving away for the Lunar New Year 880 Bright Dust. So make sure you log in, get that, and then get back to what you were doing. All right, have a good day. Make sure you don't forget to log into Destiny this week, because the store actually has good things that you might want. Starting off, we actually do have the Nothing Given shader, which is the Taken shader, which does look pretty cool. And then with Edge of Fate just around the corner, Bungie dropped into the tweet today what armor changes are going to be. Exotic armor, providing solar buffs to allies, has the chance to create a sunspot at your feet. Then we got MK44 stand asides.
Bungie actually brought these back. With Renegades, Bungie brought back vendor rewards and more specifically earnable shaders. In Farsis Katina, you can get a shader from each of the 3 factions by reaching rank 5 with them, but the one I would mainly recommend getting is Totally Chick from the Totality Division. Myself, and I know a lot of you have been waiting for Bungie to bring back vendor rewards, so I am glad that Bungie did this, and hopefully this means that Bungie will soon bring back vendor rewards for core play.
Money or beer? Beer! 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 Ah! Chug! With this crossy road on Raven! We won! No! Money or beer? Beer! 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 Chug! With this crossy road on Raven! We won! No!
He's still coming. Let's see how long he gets until he gets bored.
The guy in the bathroom, he's driving the shit and he's putting it on the wall. In that big stall over there. Hey.
The state we spend most of our lives in, where thought, perception, and action blend into the grand illusion of solidity. Here, the mind and the senses form a partnership, producing what we call reality. You feel the weight of your body, the texture of air against your sense of dusk from the night are gone. Spations, a shared means in where thought, perception, and action blend into the grand illusion what we call against your skin, the rhythm and sorting chaos into order, randomness into patterns. Every sound, color, and shape is translated into electrical signals that are then interpreted as a 3-dimensional hallucination that's just consistent enough to work. Neuroscience calls it the default mode network, the mental system that constructs the ongoing narrative of me and you, the observer at the center of the universe. But the longer you stare at waking life, the more fragile it begins to look. Sensory illusions tell us that we can't even trust our own senses. And even when there are no illusions, our limited senses compared to other living things tell us that we are not experiencing true reality, only the version of it that we can observe. Some cold-blooded animals can see infrared lights. Bats and whales have echolocation. And animals like cows, deer, and butterflies can even detect and use the Earth's magnetic field. Even within humans, some people have synesthesia and can see shapes and colors when they hear music. They are experiencing the world in a completely different way than all of us will ever be able to. So, if that's the case, how can we say for certainty what the real reality is? Time
wanted to express this.
None of it matters.
I don't love you anymore. Bye.